Greetings and welcome to this seminar. Today's seminar is organized by Training and Placement Cell and Entrepreneurship Cell of IIT-Patna. This webinar will focus on coming back from COVID-19, learning and lessons for education and entrepreneurship by Honorable Dr. Anand Deshpande, founder, chairman and managing director for Persistent System. This is in line with ongoing weekend webinars by eminent personalities from industries to share their journeys, knowledge, and various opportunities to overcome challenge in these difficult times. Dr. Anand Deshpande achieved his PhD from Indiana University and is a Bachelor of Computer Science and Engineering from IIT Kanpur. Today, we are blessed to have him, and it will be a privilege to hear about his journey, COVID-19, his difficulties, and what all we can gain from it. So, welcome, sir, and thank you so much for being a part of us.
Participants for being here today on a Saturday afternoon. I also want to thank Jose and Professor Kripa Shankar for inviting me for this event. IIT Patna is a special place because the director of IIT Patna, Professor Bhattacharya, Pushpak, is a dear friend and a classmate of mine from IIT Kharagpur. We were in the same class and I've known him for a very long time. So it's a real pleasure to be here in IIT Patna. I wish I would have been there in person, but in this context, the webinar will have to do. So it's a real pleasure interacting with all of you students. So what I want to start in terms of explaining a little bit about the COVID question and what's going to happen and all of that stuff. I want to first set a little bit of context of how you should view this world and what is going to happen and all of that. So most of the students who are on this call are probably in their early 20s. That's sort of what you would be if you are just, just graduating with your BTech, and maybe some of you who have done work experience before you joined in an MTech program. Maybe you are in the mid 20s, but typically that's the age group that you are in. I can say this with some confidence that, most of you in this age group are going to live past 100. Okay. So you're looking at the next 75 to 80 years of your life ahead. And I can assure you that this will not be the last pandemic you will see. You will see many more such pandemics, but you will live through them and you will survive and do well and all of those kind of things. The other fact of the matter I want you to understand is that there is a good chance that you will be working in an employment stage for another 40 to 50 years because of the way the demographics is going to happen, the fact that you will live longer. I think the retirement age will keep moving up. And by the time you are ready to retire, I don't see this anytime before you turn 75. So you're going to be working for the next 50 years in this whole context. So with this background, right, you have to look at today's pandemic and today's situation in the context of next 50 years of your work experience and another next 75 to 80 years of life that you're going to live through. And this is just a short glitch that we are going to see for a few weeks. Learn to live with it, and we will keep moving on. So that's something that I wanted to set up as a context before I start to answer the very specific questions of what is going to happen now. So clearly what happens in a situation like this when you have a crisis, the first reaction that everyone has is to freeze. Everyone says, oh, I don't know where this might end. I don't know when it will end. I have a lot of uncertainty. So the first reaction for businesses to deal with uncertainty is to manage costs. Reduce your cost expenses, reduce your burn. Don't do anything that you can delay. Just delay everything that you can delay and just hold back. And that includes employment, jobs, buying things, all of those things. So everything just kind of freezes for a period of time. So that's the first reaction. And that's the first phase of what happens when you get into a pandemic kind of a situation. After you have gone through this and people start to see when the end is going to be and they get comfortable with the fact that, okay, this is how it's going to pan out, then they start to think about, okay, I know that this is how long it's going to last. I know this is the impact that is there. I have these assets. This is my current business. How do I adjust my business to respond to the reality as it is now? Okay, while you are still in this first phase, you are also realizing that, okay, maybe because of these changes, the world is going to be very different. And when we come back and we look at the world, say 2 years out, what can we do now to ensure that we are a competing company, a company that can win 2 years out? So that's usually the reaction of what happens. So just a quick summary of what I was saying. One is that, hey, you guys are going to live a long time. This is just the starting of your career. I think in the next 50 years, we'll see many more pandemics, so you don't have to get too concerned about them. You have to figure out a way to how to deal with them. But the basic things that companies do is they first freeze, then they start to take stock of situations and try to do the more immediate things. But they're also thinking about long-term stuff right now. So there are a lot of different dynamics that you will see in the short term. So when people are looking to hire and all that, they're likely to be frozen for some time. But I think things will open up and you will see more action from companies as the pandemic starts to get clarity as to how long this is going to last and how it's going to go. So, Sudhir, sorry about a sort of a long answer to your question, but I thought it'd be good to get the context set up in the first question and then we can follow up with shorter answers.
Yes, sir. It was really insightful for us, and I would like you to like many of us will be looking for employment in a year or two. In your opinion, how can we prepare ourselves for challenging similar to this?
Okay, so what I'm going to tell you is that yes, you need to prepare for. So while you are in college, right? So let me sort of step back and give you a few more things in the context of where you need to be. So I do a lot of workshops for people in the mid 40s, okay, to help them with managing their career in mid 40s. I don't do as much with very young students or students starting out from college. But what I have observed is that if you want to be successful in your mid 40s, you need to do a few things right in the first 10 years or so. So I'm going to give you 5 things that you should be thinking about in terms of things you should consider doing now so that you have a better chance of being successful in your career, whether you do employment or you do anything else. So I'm going to give you these first 5 things. First one is you must have a dream, okay? So a lot of stuff happens only if you have a dream about it. And there is no reason why you need to think short on your dreams. And despite what is happening in COVID and all that, I don't think this should anyway throttle your dreams. You all have made it to an IIT. And I think people at IIT, the big thing that IIT does for students is to give them a dream. And I think you should be thinking about a long, big life of what you can achieve and all the great aspirational things that you should be doing. And unless you dream all those things, there is no chance that it's going to happen. So if you want good things to happen to you, you should dream about them. And I think it's important to not be miserly in your dreams because after all, they're dreams. Might as well think big, right? So there's no why you should not be thinking about it. The second thing I want to tell you is that this is the best time to learn how to learn. Okay. And this is very critical. If you don't learn how to learn in your earliest part of your career, like in college or in other places, then you will have difficulty learning this later. So this is the time for you to not only learn, but learn how to learn. Okay. And as you would have noticed in this context right now, lots of courses are available online. You can go learn many different things online. Colleges are also sort of more open to ideas in various areas. So you will see that people are open to ideas and you have lots of opportunities to learn. And one other thing I want to point out here is that we in India tend to have a very narrow focus. So we sort of say, okay, ninth may decide karo ki biology or science and this and that, and you keep reducing it. And when you come to engineering, by the time you are there, you're only worried about your subject courses and all that. The reality is that in the next 50 years, technology is going to change. Many things are going to be different. And what you do now may not be what you have learned in your class is not going to be very relevant to you in the future. But what is going to be relevant is your ability to learn. So you should know how to learn different kinds of things, learn how to pick up different kinds of skills, and really take this opportunity to do that. The third item that I'm going to share with you is about networking, okay, and teamwork. So if you really think about business, and I'm a salesman in my life, I do a lot of selling. And when I'm selling, the first thing that people do business with is with people you trust. A lot of these things happen because you trust someone. And how do you build trust? The trust is built best through a network. So it's very important to be thinking about the network and the teams that you're working with. So your friends in IIT Patna, who are your classmates, who you're working with you, they are all in to be eminently successful eventually. When I was sitting next to Pushpak, and I was roll number 1, he was roll number 10. So we had a lot of classes together. I never imagined that he would be the director at IIT Patna, right? But the fact is that some of my classmates, actually, I have 4 classmates who have become directors of IITs and triple IT and things like that. So what happens is that the group that you hang out with in your early days, they kind of become successful and they take you along. The trust and other network that you create goes a long way. So take this opportunity to learn to network, make friends all the time. And one slightly controversial thing I want to mention to students here in the presence of the faculty is the fact that, you know, in our lives, especially in college, we tend to meet a lot of people. But when you look back 30 years later, or say when I look back at my friends, those people with whom I wasted most time, they are my best friends today. Okay. Those people who were the toppers in the class or who did their own things, we hardly remember them. But those people with whom we spent that time sitting in Shadis is what Kharagpur is very famous for, having chai and coffee. They are the guys who are still my friends. Okay. So it's very important to use this opportunity to network. Number 4, I'm going to share with you is about focus. Okay. And again, being focused is very important because you cannot do many things at the same time. So it's when you're doing a certain set of activities, you should be really focused about that particular activity because you want to make the most of the time that you have available to you. So really being focused is important. And finally, I want to mention that all of you need to think about being persistent. And I use that in a good way, saying that we are persistent systems, but really being persistent is what makes a difference between those who win and those who don't. If you look at all the athletes, let's say you're looking at somebody who runs a 100-meter race, I'm sure before he won his first race, there are many races when he was second, he was third, he may not have finished, lots of different issues. The fact that they came back and practiced and came back and practiced and came back and practiced what made them successful. If you give up at the first opportunity, you're done. You're going to make it again. So again, let me reiterate. The first thing is to be dreaming. Second thing is you need to learn how to learn. Third is learn how to network, be very focused and be persistent. So these are things that you should do whether you are in COVID or not COVID. From my point of view, if you look at a marathon that you are in, yes, we have had a disruption in the first end of it. So that's really where you should talk about that. So that's what I wanted to mention as something that you might want to look at.
Thank you, sir. I assure you that we, as a student community, will definitely take up all these 5 points that you mentioned in your talk. Now, moving forward, sir, I would like to know about little bit about persistence system, as in how persistence system is doing in terms of its growth, and what are the changes the organization faced after initial pass.
Okay, so this is a very loaded question. I'm going to try to see how to do some justice to this. So I started a business in 1990. Okay, so this is a 30-year-old business now. I moved to a chairman role and not the. I was CEO till about a year back. Last February, I hired a new CEO, so I'm still a chairman and founder, and also a significant shareholder in the company. But now I'm sort of thinking broader. But the company, what happens is that we are about 10,000 employees across the world, and we did about $500 million, so roughly 3,500 crores of revenues in the last financial year. Over the last 30 years, we have done about $4 billion in revenues across the 30 years. Of course, when you start a business with very little investment and you kind of grow it, uh, growth of the business is very tricky. It goes through lots of challenges. Lots of people are involved in the business at various times. They come in, they do their part, and they keep moving. But companies grow through what I call S curves. So you do certain things right, you get an S, and then moving from the first S to the second S requires different things. Second to third, third to fourth, and so on. So we are in our fourth S right now, and I can see that every S is a very challenging, different environment. Every time you are looking at different sets of issues, needs different kinds of people and different kind of thinking to make that happen. Today we are headquartered in Pune, but we've always been headquartered in Pune, but we have about people in about 18 countries at the moment. So we are very global at the moment. We do mostly software work and we do all kinds of software. But yeah, That's really what Persistent does.
Thank you, sir. And now I would like to invite Shivam Bhaiya from MTech moderator, and he will be taking up the charge.
Sure. I just want to mention here is that, we are going to take questions from the audience as well. So if you feel like you want to ask something, put it in the chat. I think there's a Q&A window. If you
Yes, sir.
post it there.
Actually, we are collecting all those questions, sir, and we will be filtering out and will be putting out you in a ordered manner.
Perfect. You guys are so well organized. I'm impressed.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now I will make. I am welcoming.
I'm Shivam.
Hi Shivam, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. So you are an epitome of a perfect and a successful entrepreneur, and have been assisting and helping young entrepreneurs build up their dream company for quite a while now. So my question would rather focus on entrepreneurship. So in your various talks, you have talked about an eminent issue in India, that is the shortage of jobs, and how should people help create jobs rather than seeking for it. So could you explain and enlighten us with the work the Asara Foundation is doing in this regard, and how can we as students take use this opportunity?
Okay, so I think that's a good question. So let me give you a little bit of context of the Asra Foundation and what I'm trying to do there in this whole scheme of things, and that might give you a sense of how I look at entrepreneurship and what we could do together here as well. So you get to a point where you're in your life and you sort of say, okay, I should do something for the community. And one of my friends has this phrase that you should first learn, then you should earn, and then return. So I was at that phase where I'm sort of in my early 50s, and I'm saying, okay, I need to do something to return back to the community. Community has been good for me. I should give back something. And in that context, I was starting to think about some big, good problem to work on. And I found that employment is really a huge issue in India. So let me give you the context here. So we have in India 1.3 billion people. Okay, half of those are below the age of 25. So that means almost 650 million people are below the age of 25. All right. And 60% are below the age of 35. So fairly large young population that we have. So if you divide 25 by 625, 650, you're looking at least 25 million people at every age in India at this point. So if you look at 25 million people at every age in India, at any age, at any time, you need about 15 to 18 million jobs so that you can, provide employment to these 25 million people who are going to be available for jobs at that time. Now, if you need to create these 15 million jobs to happen, these jobs are not going to happen by just working on government or government giving you jobs or any of those kinds of things. So these jobs are going to happen only if you have large number of job creators. So I believe that, country like India, we need to have more and more job creators, young people who are in this room and otherwise should take life in their own hands and kind of find their own jobs and create their own employment rather than depend on other people for jobs. So that was the motivation for creating the Asra Foundation. And the idea there was we want to do this at scale. We want to do this at a certain class. And what I find in general is that the middle of the pyramid, right? Not the very small jobs, but the sort of our footprint is those where we want to make sure that every employee makes at least 20,000 rupees a month. So they're fairly, low end jobs. They're not the high end tech jobs that there are VCs and other people looking at. And they're very small, the self-help groups and the rural village jobs are a little different. So I'm focusing a lot on urban services segments, so photographers, beauty salons, food counters, and all of these kinds of things. And trying to say that, say, in a city like Patna, I'm sure there are lots of tailors. Why should every tailor have to reinvent what it means to run a tailoring business? Can they not share from each other how they have worked on this? So what we have done is we have created templates and very specific things to help tailors to farm the beauty salons, the food counters, the dance classes, you can name hundreds of businesses of this kind, which is what fuels our economy. And we want to make sure that every single person in that group is successful and does not fail. And that's really what we are doing. So we've been working on this for the last 5 years. We are now about 85 to 87,000 businesses supported. And we have gotten some momentum now. So we are growing at about 5,000 new businesses every month. So the Deyasra mission or the target group for Deyasra is targeted to urban services jobs. I believe that IIT Patna some of the students who are here, I think you all should look at entrepreneurship as an option. But I think what you're looking at is not necessarily exactly in the Dayasara business sweet spot. But I do run a lot of different curriculums, programs, and helping entrepreneurs, including various kinds of things that I do on a personal level, where I am intimately involved with entrepreneurship and startups and other startup communities. And I cannot tell you how right this time is to think about entrepreneurship and new businesses.
Yes, sir. Thank you. That was indeed some really informative thing. So, my dear young minds, the most amazing Diasra Foundation is standing with you to help your ideas sail past. Now, sir, what are the major challenges that we need to overcome if we are interested in starting our own business right after our
Correct.
college education? And what support can we expect from the government as well as the market on our starting up?
Right. Okay, so let me explain what are the main ingredients for a startup. Okay, so the most important thing that a startup needs to have to get going is a problem that you're solving. So startups are all about solving a problem that somebody is willing to pay for. And the more of these and the more payments you can get, the better it is. So business ideas need to have an idea that is actually something that we have figured out that people can use, some idea that can be solved, something of that kind. So really the idea of finding a problem that you can solve very effectively so that people will be willing to pay for it. So that whole concept of how do you find this problem to solve is the most important aspect of a startup. If you don't have an idea or you don't have a problem to solve, there is really nothing to do for a startup. So this is the first and the most important thing. Second part of it has to be around building a team. Okay. So finding the right people who understand and who are passionate about working this all together. Those are the two most important ingredients for starting a new business. Okay. So that's something that I want you to understand. The money part of it, while it's interesting and important, I don't believe that that is necessarily the only reason or only way to start a business. A lot of businesses that do well actually start with no funding at all and actually work with customers who start to pay for the service early enough that you are able to make money while you're building the product. Okay, and that's something I would like to encourage you to think about. On the sort of what will the government provide and what happens to what kind of help can you get in the market? So, personally, I don't believe the government will do a whole lot for startups in the short term or otherwise. I think the real value is to find a problem that somebody cares about. If there is a problem that you're solving that somebody cares about, they will want to pay for it. So the market can pay for ideas and get something going, but that's sort of where I would focus a lot on. I discourage people from starting startups that are only selling to the government, because selling to the government is not that easy. It's very painful and it can take forever, and you may not get results in the time frame that you need and get payments in the time frame you need when you work for the government. So, that's my opinion.
Thank you, sir. That was indeed like we have some questions from our audiences that
Go for it.
related to this theme. This was related to that theme, so I guess they have their answers now. So, being a technical expert or developing a product and making a business out of it are quite different things. That is
Yes.
something that do scare any budding entrepreneur as well. What would your advice be to anyone who does not have any business experience but is interested in becoming an entrepreneur? And how can he develop the necessary business skills, as you talked about it earlier?
Correct. So two things I would suggest. One is, if you feel like you're not sure exactly what to do and you think maybe you're not ready or whatever else, you may consider partnering with or joining a startup where they already have something going. So a lot of the early stage startups, a lot of the successful startups that you'll hear about in the market are started by people who have no experience or no background of running a startup. But what do they have? They have a lot of passion, enthusiasm, and energy. And they go and they are willing to learn and they hire the right set of people to come and join them. So that's really what makes a business very successful. So, from the point of view of those who don't have the background or otherwise, I don't think that's really should be something that should hold you back. I think you will want to do a startup if you, one, have a good understanding of the problem that you want to solve. Second, you have a pretty good understanding of the team you can put together and they can come with you. And you have the passion and the enthusiasm to keep driving this thing to a solution rather than just be, just doing something or the other. So I think putting it all together and getting this to work is very critical. And as you get along, there is enough information online. There is enough stuff on the Asra as well and various other places where you can learn how to do the startup. So even though you may not have learned it or you may not have a family background in it, doesn't mean you should not consider doing a startup.
So I guess one of our audience question that was not every startup can have a technological innovation or anything like that.
Correct.
What other field or dimension should an engineering student focus on is being has been answered like by you.
Yes, and you can do startups in any area, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be technology or software or any of those things. Like I said, I'm working with a lot of people who are starting restaurants and food counters and vada pav, whatever, and then they are able to create franchises out of those. Or anywhere there is a problem, right? There's an opportunity. Everywhere there is a problem, somebody's willing to pay for it. You can build a startup around it. That's the whole beauty about a startup. And your engineering degree or whatever degree you have may not have any relevance to what it is. But if you are able to find a problem, can bring a team together, put some passion with it, and then go at it, you have a shot at it.
Yes, sure. And so my last and final question is, what is the scope of research in entrepreneurship and startups?
Okay, so there are again, when you talk about research, right, there is a multifaceted problem that you mentioned. Okay? So first is, okay, if you have done research, you have a PhD, which I did. As I said, I started my business after doing a PhD. Did that help me? Of course it did. So I was very specialized. I knew more about the area. So when you're trying to find a problem, sometimes it's very hard to find a problem when you are just doing a BTech or whatever. You start to spend more time in an area, you get to see more problems in a different way. So having a research background or having a PhD is not a impediment to starting a startup. But that said, it's not a necessary condition either. So you don't have to have a PhD to start a startup. But if you had one, that doesn't mean that it's going to hold you in a disadvantage in any way. So that's one aspect of research and saying that if you are a researcher, can you not do it? The second aspect is that there are lots of hard problems that are worth solving. Can we build some engine that can take the current virus and sort of some enzymes and generate the next generation of vaccines or any of these things? How can you build automation around these? A lot of different problems are there which are inherently very difficult, hard. They need a team of people who have done the research in this area, who can look at new evolution of things and all that. So there is a lot of hard problems that are worth solving. And if you can solve these hard problems, you need a team that has understanding of research and technology. So there are certain problems that are inherently best suited for researchers to do. Or if you are not the researcher, hiring somebody who is a researcher. So that's the other part of it. Third question is, what about research in startups? That's a little bit of a different question. And if faculty members or other people in the group want to do research on what's happening in the startup ecosystem, that's another research idea. But that's more of a PhD problem for people who are in the academic area who want to sort of do research in this area. And there are enough startup researchers and startup PhDs as well.
So we do have a lot of researchers in our institution, so that
Yes.
help them think about entrepreneurship and startups. So thank you, sir. This was all I would like to ask you on entrepreneurship. I would now pass on this question and answer session to Avinash, who is going to find out answers to his queries. Meanwhile, I would request the attendees to write down their questions in the chat box so that we can take your questions to an answer. Over to you, Avinash. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivam. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Avinash Singh Chauhan. I'm a master's student here in IIT-Patna. So we have seen that COVID had affected almost every corner and department. So education field is also not an exception here.
Correct.
What changes can we expect to see in opportunities in higher studies or opting for a job? In short, what should be the change in motivation for one going for higher study and opting for job?
You have asked a very loaded question. And there are many dimensions to this problem. So one idea is that, of course, jobs are going to be hard to come. Maybe the best jobs that you're looking for, those specific companies are having difficulty. So maybe they're waiting out or whatever else. So clearly you have time, you're thinking about what to do, you're not very sure. So doing a higher studies or doing a PhD or doing a master's at this point is not a bad idea. It's a good way to sort of let the circumstances ride over, and you are in a better situation later on to get going. So that's one thought process. Now, I do realize that, if you wanted to be in an MTech program, you should have already done GATE. If you wanted to go abroad, you should have already done GRE and all that stuff. You should have had admissions. But, what has happened in the last 6 weeks to 8 weeks, last 80 days or so that we have been in this sort of pandemic mode is that people have realized that this whole without travel, online web education is starting to become quite meaningful. And most colleges are offering classes online, and some of them are free, and lots of small courses have started to happen. So you will be able to go to take classes all through the year without having to actually enroll in a big program. So that is phenomenal, right? So now students from anywhere in the world can attend lectures from the best teachers in the world, and that's sort of where it's going to go. Now, this creates a new question for everyone. So, what is the value of colleges? Do we really need to have colleges? If everybody can go online and get online education, why do I need to get to college at all? Do job seekers care about colleges? So, usually if you look at colleges, there are three things that colleges are providing you. One is, of course, the certification, saying that you have a degree from IIT Patna. Very valuable. The second part, of course, is the education part of it. So you go to class, you can get that. But now with this whole world as we see it, if you are attending a class from your professor from IIT Patna or from IIT Bombay or from MIT, it hardly makes a difference because you can see the same class in the same format. So the education part of it potentially can be managed in different ways. The third aspect of what colleges provide is an experience, the fact that you meet other students and you work that out. And today, with the fact that you are all locked in and working from home or whatever else, that experience part has definitely become difficult. So, really, I see that everyone who is looking at education being such a big industry, and the fact that so much money is involved in it, amount of money we all spend in education is pretty large. So I think this is a great opportunity for disruption. I think the education as we see it in the next 5 years will look very different from what we have seen traditionally for the last several hundred years. So I think this is a great opportunity, and people who are um, in in not sure about where to go, eh, use this opportunity to learn something new.
Thank you, sir. That will surely help final year students in making decisions. And like you told about the importance of having studying in colleges. So here one more thing comes into play, that is career planning. So as a student, what should be our short-term and long-term goals while planning our careers?
Okay, good question. And I think everybody's thinking about this. So, what I suggest is that, see, if you look at, and this is what I started as well, right? I said, hey, you guys are early 20s right now. You're going to live till you're 100 or even beyond. And you're going to work till you are 75, right? So, you are going to work for another 50 plus years. And in that whole 50-year journey, what you have learned in college is not going to last that long. And the proof of it is to just look 20 years back. Whatever tools you are using, many of them did not exist 20 years back. So we cannot predict what's going to happen 20 years from now. And so hence, there is no way what you're learning in IIT Patna today is going to hold you for 10 years beyond this. So you have to learn how to learn. Okay? That's the most important thing that everybody should be learning in terms of what they need to do. The second part of it is to say we need to build a network, and we learn how to be in the team and how to get going with other people and how do you get to know each other so you can build trust and confidence in people who you're working with. So yeah, I think employment is important and everybody is worried about employment. But what my suggestion is, don't worry too much about employment. What we are seeing in COVID is a short-term glitch. There'll be a small problem for those who are graduating right now because some of the jobs that you had planned might shift around. But in every downturn, there are some other companies that will have an upturn. So be nimble, be agile, keep moving, and you'll find something that makes sense. I think people from IITs, I don't think will have any issues finding jobs in general. So I'm quite optimistic about where you will land up post this whole COVID world.
So one question we are having from the audience, it's like, how relevant is an MBA for a startup? I mean, is it better to invest the MBA amount on a startup, or MBA gives you any edge?
So MBA definitely gives you an advantage in the employment part of it, but not necessarily in the entrepreneurship side. So it is not a bad idea to have an MBA, but it's not a necessary condition to have an MBA if you want to do a startup. MBA people tend to find, I find that MBAs tend to do more jobs than to do their own startups. Okay. And so if you want to just do a startup, I think it's not that critical to do an MBA. However, if you're looking at jobs and you're not sure, an MBA is a pretty good degree. You get to learn a lot of different things. You get to meet a lot of different people also. So is MBA a good degree for someone who has finished engineering? The answer is yes, but a lot depends on the kind of line of thinking you want to have. If you have a good problem that you know already and you can solve it, and that's something you can work on, then I wouldn't worry about the MBA.
Okay, sir. So you told that in the first decade of our career, we should focus on 5 different topics. So one among them was building, networking, and growth. So how this building, how we are going to build this network, and how it is different from the network we are having through social networking sites?
I think social networking sites and other networks are all related in some way. But let me say, why do you need to have a network? What does a network do for you? Okay, so you have to understand that when you do business with someone, you tend to do business with people you trust. How do you trust someone, right? Why do you trust somebody? Why do you go buy certain kinds of products and not some other kind of products? A lot of that has to do with the fact that you know, people you believe in tell you about a certain things that has very high credibility. So if your professor were to introduce me to somebody, and that has much better value than just you writing down. The fact that Pushpak is at IIT Patna was a good reason for me to say, yeah, fine, I'll come to IIT Patna to do this lecture. It may not have happened if some student were to write to me who I did not know. So a lot of this stuff in our life depends on how well we are connected and who we know. And it is important to build this network. So I explained to you why it is important to build a network. Now let me explain to you how to build a network. So, social networking is definitely a good place to build a network. It's also a very nice place to do this very inexpensively in some sense. So you can go on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter or any of those things. And if you start to genuinely start to engage with people and all that, people will start to know you. So that's useful. Getting to know through the professors or various other places, events that you go to. These are all various ways to get networking to happen. And as I mentioned to you, some of the people who are in your class are eventually going to become important people in the society. And that network is something that you will carry for a long time. These networks are not built overnight. They get built over days. Every day you build a few nodes in your network and few edges get added on. And you keep doing this over a period of time. And after a long period of time, you'll start to see that your network is worth something. It is important to have as much diversity in your network as possible, which is why I recommend being part of professional organizations, whether it's the ACM or the Mechanical Engineering Society or any of those kinds of things. There may be other kinds of volunteering activities that you might look at as ways to become part of a network. So there are a lot of these kinds of social things that you can do to become part of the network. And so this is where you do. And one final thing I want to mention to you is that the rule of the network is you have to give to the network first before you can take anything from the network. So if people want to say that, if you want to be part of the society, or let's say ACM or some other mechanical engineering society, and you want people to recognize you, well, you have to recognize other people first before they will recognize. So this whole world about the network, which is what you're going to take advantage of, works well when you contribute to it. So you have to contribute to the network before you can benefit from it. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I'm just saying that the people are more concerned about the economic recession. One question is like that we hear that an economic recession has already started or will be starting soon. Would it be fair to compare it with the 2008 recession? So in 2008, India was able to survive that recession without huge impact. So do you think that we can do it again?
See, the fact that we are going to see a recession is very clear. Okay, we are in the midst of it, and the fact that businesses are being shut down for 80 days, clearly that has had an impact on the economy, and there will be some slowdown or whatever else. So the way I like to think about this is in two different ways. So one is there's a macro problem that you are aware of. On the micro level, it doesn't mean that every individual suffers in a recession. So one of the things that you need to think about from your point of view, where you are and looking for jobs and all of those things, is to see how can you benefit during the recession period as well. So recession may not be there in every aspect or every industry. And for many of you who are in the sort of education, tech, and other industries where you're looking at various things, we have Atmanirbhar Bharat and many other schemes that the government is promoting. So in all of these kinds of contexts, it's very clear that there are going to be new opportunities. And while we are in a recession, doesn't necessarily mean it's really bad for everyone. And you might want to take advantage of the various new things that are coming up and really ride the recession in some sense to get to the point where you are in a better situation when the market starts to open up in a big way.
Thank you, sir. Sir, this is question related to again a startup. So one student is asking what are some serious risks while putting base for a startup? Because there are a lot of failed startup and people often ignore those risks. So are there some basic principle for a startup?
Okay, so let me first explain to you that startups and all of these things are a journey rather than a destination. Okay, so when you fail in a thing, it's not that you have failed as a startup. You have learned many things that you must not do again so that you don't have a failed startup. But for an individual who does that startup, a failure in the startup is not a failure in his life, but it's a learning opportunity in his life. So this is something you have to understand and think about. And in my opinion, one of the biggest difference between Silicon Valley and India or other places is this first important realization that a failed startup is not considered as a cross in people's lives, but is seen as something that they are something that they are very proud of. Okay, so failure in startups does not necessarily mean failure in life or fact that you did not learn anything. So nothing wrong with failing in startups. And the whole rule of startups is that you are taking high risk. You are trying to do something that is innovative. And it is necessary that many startups will fail. Okay. So fact is that, startups fail is not a bad thing, and it's not something that I would worry too much about. Now that said, how do you ensure that if you're running your startup, how do you ensure that you will not fail to the extent possible, right? So first is there are some basic things that you should be thinking about. One, of course, is the fact that you should have a problem, you should know what you're trying to do, you should have a team that is there, and you should build a network of mentors who are going to help you through some of these challenges. So if you have a trouble, you have somebody you can go to and you can ask. Of course, there are courses and other things you could do as well. There are incubators and there are these support groups that we have created in India as well who help each other to ensure that we don't get into a crazy situation with startups. So it's kind of important that you all think about startups as a journey rather than as a destination.
So you mentioned that recession will be there, that is confirmed, but that doesn't mean that it will be for everyone. So according to you, which form of or field according to you will be the most emerging after this COVID situation?
Uh, yeah, this is a hard question, but let me take a crack at some of the areas. So I think, post COVID, the tech industry will do fine. I think the healthcare industry will do a lot of different things, and we'll see a different kind of healthcare industry moving forward. But the whole biology, integration, healthcare, all of those things I think will do really well. I think the education industry is going to look for a change. I think we're going to see a very different kind of industry when we move forward. I think by and large, the consumer centric businesses, whether they are food, agriculture, all of those will definitely do well. And the challenges I see are mainly in the sort of tourism, travel, hospitality, these kinds of businesses where there is a lot of interactions that we need to manage. But I think over a period of time, let's say 3 to 6 months, we will find some solutions of how we can live with COVID, and we will get used to a new protocol of how we move and operate. And I do expect that travel tourism will come back more in the next 9 to 12 month time frame rather than the next 3 to 6 month time frame.
Similar to job shortage, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
just to be the job creator, what are the other issues in you think that the young generation should work upon?
So, like I said, to become a job creator or to become a startup entrepreneur or any of these things doesn't require anything tremendously crazy. Anybody can do it. You need to have a good problem that somebody is willing to pay. You have to work through that problem, make sure it's something that people understand what they're looking for, and you can solve the problem that people are looking to do. So that's very important. So that's first thing. Second thing is you need to have a team and you need to execute on this. And to make all this work, you need to have the passion, desire, and the enthusiasm to make it work. So you don't need like a whole lot of different things to make the startup happen. And there is no shortage of ideas today, especially because of the pandemic. Many of these areas have been exposed to us. How do we make better vaccines? How do we treat people faster? How do we build shelters? How do we build hospitals? How do we get ventilators? But there is no shortage of new things that one can be thinking about on how do you build all these things so that you have a business that people are willing to buy.
Thank you, sir. That was great for helping us out to understand future challenges. Most important, getting all sort of solution from an experienced person like you was an unique experience for all of us. This is going to help us. One last question that we as a student wants to know from you. So, how IIT Patna and students can get strong association with persistent system in terms of research, internship opportunities, startup guidance, etc.
Yeah, I think we have to find a way to engage much more closely. I'll be happy to introduce you to the team that runs a lot of our campus placement and other activities. And we'll be happy to do that. And I think we are now in multiple locations all across India and also abroad. So I think training and other opportunities are also definitely there. So we have to find a way to engage and get to know each other better. And I'm sure we can find ways to work together. On a personal level, I would love to, offer my help in any which way I can. And I think if any of you are trying to do startups or other things, don't hesitate to write to me. My email address is Anand, my first name at persistent.com. So send me email and I'll be happy to interact with you or connect you to people that maybe who can have better ways of explaining what you're looking for.
Thank you so much, sir. We will get back to you. So for the 5 minutes, we are going to take the question answer from the audience because we are just running out of time. So if audience are having some more questions, please put it in the box. We will be for the next 5 minutes. We are going to take the questions. Uh, Engineering students don't have a direct exposure to what market needs in terms of business. So how should a student is going to deal with such situation?
See, again, the beauty of the world is that everyone is a consumer at all times, right? So even though you don't have exposure to the market, you live in a life and you see people around you, and you see the challenges that people are going through, and asking and meeting as many people as you can is another way to find out what the market needs. So you create a basic plan that says, okay, I want to do something, and then you get the market to validate it. So even though you don't have direct exposure to the market, there is enough available online. There is enough ways to look at what may be needed. And I'm sure everyone gets these crazy ideas on an all-time basis. So if you see the idea, then there are ways to see how can you validate the market potential of that idea. So that's how I would look at it. So I think, everyone has exposure to the market in some form or the other, is what I'm saying.
Uh, Not every startup can have a technological innovation or anything like that.
Correct.
What other field or dimensions should an engineering student should focus on? More likely those who
Just
are
talked
going
about
for
it. So we just talked about this, right? As it is, one of the things that you'll see is that a lot of see, you can have a startup in any area, right? It doesn't have to be only engineering or technology. People are looking at food counters, restaurants, any of those things can be good places to have a startup.
So now I'm just
one question from the audience regarding this recession and altogether, and your experience with the 2008 recession as well. Because as somebody who has steered your company through that recession period, and say how did you manage it, and what sort of changes did you bring into your company or the business in that particular aspect? And I would also like to ask you, like, how do you manage such a kind of pressure? Because there are thousands of people, employees who are dependent on you in order to take the right decisions and so on. So how do you manage that pressure, and how do you change that?
Okay, so on the pressure management, all of that stuff, right? So I think it's very important to understand, and for CEOs especially, to understand that they don't know everything, and you have to be humble enough to admit that. So that's first thing. So you don't have to do everything yourself, is basically what I'm trying to say. So who does other things for you? One is you have to have a team, right? So it's other people in the group. Everyone works together as a team, and together you are solving the problem. And that is the beauty of working in a business or working together. So working together is when it is possible to get things done, because there's other people in the team who have different kinds of expertise, and when you bring it together, you are able to solve some good problems. Now, regarding what happened in 2008, the 2008 crisis was very different in many ways, because it was driven by a financial event and was not as much a health crisis as we have now. And it did not touch as many people on the ground as it is going to touch right now, with the fact that we've been locked in for more than 80 days. But few things that we did in the 2008 crisis, which I think are worth reminding people. So as I said, I've been mostly in the sales side of the business, and I like the sales part of my business. And one of the things that I find is that during these kinds of times, all our customers, especially individuals, are expecting empathy from us. If we are selling to them, they're not really interested in buying anything at this point, but they are very interested in us engaging with them, empathizing with them, thinking about their families, thinking about what they might do, and helping them at large about life and everything else around it, rather than just on a transaction. So the game at this moment is to focus on relationships and not on transactions. And this is something that the pandemic teaches you in some sense, or a crisis teaches you, but that is the reality of how you need to deal with things anyway, meaning people don't value transactions as much as they value relationships. So building these relationships is very critical. And this is sort of what I learned during the 2008 pandemic. And I believe that a lot of new people will get that learning this time around as well, is how do you build relationships? How do you build empathy with customers and employees, and how they can take you forward, because you are all working together and we all believe in the same mission and ideas.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Maybe one last question, which has been asked by the students. It is regarding, say, like, with the changing work conditions, most of the time, maybe people might be starting to work from home, which the employees or the students feel that, okay, that would be eating up into their private life as well.
Yes.
So it would be much more harder to get the work-life balance kind of thing. So what would be your suggestion on this, or what is your take?
So, this whole concept of work-life balance is broken anyway. What I believe is that, see, in your grandparents' days, or in my parents' days, or whatever, we would have this concept of you go to work and you come back. come back home and then work doesn't come with you. Today, that's not the case. We work and home, it's all together. Life and work and all is all related. We work together in all of these things at the same time. So these are not isolated things anymore. And we have to learn how to balance these kinds of things. So it's not enough to say, okay, I isolate work and life in different ways. And by and large, work is also quite open to having life coming into it. So we have most of our events are all with families, people are invited and all these things. So if you have a call today, if the kid walks in, people accept that. They're not really avoiding that. So I think this whole separation of work and life is not going to happen. I think people have to give time to work and give time to families, and they have to learn how to balance these two things.
Thank you very much, sir. So it has been an hour spending with you, and it has been very informative, and I feel the students are also kind of inspired because even under these situations, somebody like you who is able to motivate, showing the experiences from the past and able to run a big organization, giving them advices on this entrepreneurship and so on. I think that is something which the students really needed. And I'm very grateful for your time on behalf of IIT Patna as well as all the students who have taken part here. And I also extend the thanks, especially if you
I just want to mention here, right? So I think students need to take a long-term view. Yes, there is a short-term glitch right now, but think long-term. There are lots of opportunities that are opening up. So I don't think this is the time to feel depressed or stressed about it. In fact, use this opportunity to learn and figure out how to position yourselves better. And people from IIT Patna, you guys are an elite institution, guys. So if you start to think that there are no jobs for you, what will happen to the other people, right? So you are the guys who are going to make jobs happen. You are the job creators of the world. And I'm really excited to be here. And I want to encourage you to look at the world very differently and don't accept just the reality as it is. Make the world happen for you. That's sort of what I would say.
Yes,
Thanks for inviting me, Jos.
Thank you. And thank you for Kripa Singh as well as our director.
And the students also did an excellent job of asking questions. I want to thank Shivam, Avinash, and Sudhir for their excellent work in coordinating all of this stuff.
Yes. So Mohit and others was also handling the questions and so on. So
last question. It's our request to Anand sir. When the situation improves and your schedule permits, so please plan a visit to IIT Patna.
Absolutely. It's on my calendar for a long time, actually.
Yeah.
Puspak has been inviting me to, and I will be there one of these days.
Okay.
I'm going to come with my wife, and we're going to spend a week around Patna as well. So I'm looking forward.
Okay, we do look forward to your visit, definitely. Thank you for your assurance as well. And thank you for your valuable time. So I feel this is one of the webinars where the students have also engaged quite actively. There has been a lot of questions from the students, and I'm very happy to see the engagement from the students and your willingness to answer directly to them as well. Thank you very much, sir. And I hope that your message would be taken up by the students with all enthusiasm, and they would really benefit from that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.